Hey everybody, this is Perch, and talking Batgirl. Yeah, so we've got a viewer mail here asking about Batgirl, kind of a latest development in the Batgirl saga. Now, if you haven't been following along, basically what went on is Warner Brothers had created a Batgirl movie, and the Batgirl movie had been filmed. I think it was in post production, so they'd spent a lot of money on it, but still some more money to go to release it. So typically, if you're not familiar with this kind of thing, movies cost money. I know, shocking, right? But the money comes in different pieces. You have your initial money to get the script ready. You do your casting, you film. That's where a bulk of the money comes in. And then you have post-production, depending on the amount of green screen, the amount of special effects, and other things. Your post-production bill can be kind of high. So superhero movies typically have a higher post-production bill than in special effects bill than, say, I don't know, a movie about a cowboy eating spaghetti. There's not a lot of after effects you need to do with that. Also, nobody's watching that movie, but that's kind of how it goes. So if you're doing a sci-fi epic, tons of post production money. If you're doing a biopic about the 1950s civil rights movement, probably less special effects are needed. So kind of how it goes. Anyway, Batgirl probably didn't have a ton of post-production, but decently amount. There was green screen work that was done. They were going to have to go through and do lighting. So there's probably about another 10 to 20 million that were going to go into that movie. And then there would need to be other things. Now, the Batgirl, the people who worked on Batgirl have claimed that all the money was spent. And so they've downplayed the additional money that was needed. And then the studio has claimed that there was quite a bit of money still needed, somewhere in the realm of 20 to 40 million for post-production and marketing. What is the truth? Who knows? But, it wasn't going to be zero. I think everybody can at least agree on that. So Dana Zaslav, as coming in to do the Discovery merger of Warner Media, basically, took a look at this project and others and said, we're not going to release that. Basically, not that lesson, we're not going to release it. Basically, we're not going to put more money into it. And I don't think this movie is going to get a return. I think the movie was kind of aimed or steered toward HBO Max streaming service and not the theaters. And Zaslav is a theater guy from all indications. And so he's like, I don't think I can make money on this, so I'm not going to sink more money into this to just lose it. That was basically the argument. Now, you'll notice in that entire rendition, there was one fact I omitted. And I omitted that fact because it doesn't really matter to the story. The story is an executive came in who's looking to cut costs, decided that, for whatever analysis was done, decided that the movie wasn't going to make more money. And it was likely going to lose money, so decided not to put more money into it. That's it. Now, the omitted part was the actress that was cast to play Batgirl was Barbara Gordon, but that character Batgirl, but she was black, not the lovable ginger that we all know. I don't know, the white, pale white. I don't know. Barbara never had much of a tan, so like whitish redhead. It was a different race. So as you can imagine, a lot of people immediately came into there and called the decision racist. It was not a financial decision. It was a racist decision because they canceled the movie with a black superhero in it. And thus, it has to be for racism reasons. It can't be because of financial reasons, racism reasons. And so that's been the battle. And then certainly there are people saying, not my Barbara Gordon, and there's that argument going on. But all of that is a bit of a smokescreen to the facts of the case, if you will, which is, new executive comes in, looks to cut costs, makes a financial decision, determines it can't make money, cancels it. The end. Kind of that simple. Unless you want to make the case that David Zaslav is out intentionally canceling projects with black actors, which I think there is very little evidence to that effect, then you kind of, anything else is just kind of people being silly and being speculative and all the rest. Are there people on Twitter who are making racist comments? Sure. Are there people who are on Twitter claiming racism for everything? Sure. Those things all exist. But at the end of the day, this is pretty cut and dry finances. So we have this viewer mail, kind of the latest development in the story. So it says, Perch, hey there, I don't know if you've heard, Leslie Grace, star of the now defunct Batgirl movie, has released into the public behind-the-scenes footage from the movie. This is true. There's been some behind the scenes kind of stuff that's gotten its way out there. And what is I believe is going on here is the cast, Leslie Grace and several of the others, are basically trying to get the movie released. And they're using a combo of trying to generate interest, what I would call the Ryan Reynolds Deadpool method. We'll talk about more of that in a minute. And claims racism, hoping the company can be shamed into releasing it. So there's kind of a little both. To be entirely fair, Leslie Grace has been angry, emotional, outraged. Not outraged, just upset that the movie's not getting released. And can we blame her? She worked on that film. It's going to star her. She was a star. She wanted to have that publicity, and she wanted her movie released. I get being upset, right? There's nothing wrong with being upset. Even if it's a financial decision, and it is a financial decision, if you were in that position, you'd worked on it, you'd want that movie released so you could get some publicity and, raise your profile in Hollywood. You would want that. I would want that. We would all want that. So you can't blame her for being upset. I don't believe, and I may be wrong, somebody can correct me in the comments, I don't think Leslie Grace herself has called the whole thing racist. I think she's called it unfair and you should release it and, a lot of other things, but I don't think she's pulled the racist card. Lots of other people have. At any rate, she did release some footage from the film. And I said, I'd hit it later, this is what Ryan Reynolds did for the Deadpool movie. You may remember that Deadpool was filmed, or like parts of it were filmed. And then it got kind of shelved, was going nowhere, and Reynolds, released some of the footage. And it got people excited, and people were like, holy shit, why aren't they making this thing? This thing looks great. And then they made Deadpool. So I believe that there's a little bit of an attempt to say, hey, this thing looks, to get people real excited about it, and then, the interest will swell. And then maybe Zaslav looks at it and goes, you know what, maybe it would make money. And then he releases it. So that's kind of what's going on behind the scenes. So back to the mail. It says, question. When an actor does something like this, has the actor violated the NDA of their contract? And what legal consequences will the actor be charged with from the movie studio? I'm asking this because I'm so freaking sick and tired of the seemingly illegal campaign to resurrect the Batgirl movie when there's no way that WB Discovery will ever release this movie. Thanks in advance. So, yeah, like I said, they're trying to use the Deadpool strategy to get interest to get the film released. Now, to the legality, there are lots of different NDAs. It's unclear. Who owns the footage? I mean, certainly WB or Warner Media owns the footage. They paid the bill. But generally speaking, when a movie is canned or stopped, the studio doesn't get terribly fussed about who releases it, because in some ways the studio is also wondering, hey, if you can go generate interest in this thing that changes the financials of the movie, be my guest. Where they would start to flip over into, hey, you're violating the NDA, is if, the studio was producing a different movie under the same name. So if the studio canceled this Batgirl movie and said, hey, we're going to go get the pastiest white redhead we could find and make our, a different Batgirl movie, then they'd be upset because you're confusing things by releasing footage. They would also be upset if the people releasing the footage were, making claims of racism and like really trying to paint the studio in a bad light. So it remains to be seen. Certainly some of the people involved in this campaign are trying to do just that. But if the actors and the people who are putting the footage out are not, then it's hard if the studio's really going to care. What is kind of likely is that the studio will not work with Leslie Grace again. So even if the studio doesn't terribly mind if the footage gets leaked, that they're going to get blacklisted from that studio. And that's definitely a likelihood here. Because the studio doesn't like that actors or the directors or people who are outside of the marketing and the distribution going into business for themselves. They don't like it, and they will object to it, and they will fight against it. So I think, that's definitely a case. But in general, how much they care, probably they're not going to care. I think WB is going to go, or, Warner Media is going to go, you know what, we're going to release that film. You want to leak a little bit of footage out, be my guest. If the noise gets too loud, meaning if people start to really hammer the studio, if suddenly there's a major trending Twitter campaign for days of Zaslav is a hateful racist who hates black people, if you really start to see that go on, then you're going to see the studio lawyers basically come and slap the shit out of Leslie for violating, basically, I think they wouldn't, I don't know if they'd get her for an NDA. They'd get her for basically, using and distributing company property without their express written consent. That's how they would, that's the tack they would take. And generally, they would go for a cease and desist and probably a gag order. They wouldn't go for monetary damages, but if they got really, really bent out of shape about it, they might. But most likely, the studio is gonna, not, cover their eyes and pretend not to notice this, but keep and basically see if they get the Deadpool effect, where suddenly a higher percentage of people than expected express interest in the film. And then I think they would relook at it and run the math again and go, let's see. I mean, there's also definitely the possibility, and studios do this all the time, where they would, a year from now, get the money to kind of finish the film and release it, and then the marketing campaign would be, the movie they didn't want you to see, or some shit like that, where they would try and hype up the idea of, that this was a film that wasn't supposed to be released, but we're releasing it to you anyway, and it's secret. They would do that. I think that's a definite possibility that will go down that track. But in general, probably studio doesn't do anything. She's releasing footage. People on Twitter are going to be like, "Oh man, this looks like the greatest movie in the history of all the movies. Can't believe they released that. That racist." And then 2 days later, their attention will be diverted to something Marjorie Taylor Greene is doing, or I don't know, a cute picture of a puppy with a boner, or who knows. And then they'll talk about that. Or I don't know. Marvel will announce that they're casting a disabled albino for Reed Richards, and people lose their shit about that one. So I mean, who knows? But generally, I don't think anything will come of this. She'll release the footage. People will go, some people go over the top gushing about it. Nobody will really care. The studio's going to go, yeah, we're still not going to pay $20 to $40 million to release this, and it's a done deal. So that's the likelihood. But I wouldn't. I mean, she's definitely going to be blacklisted for WB. For I keep saying WB, for Warner Media for doing this, but they're not going to waste. I mean, just like they're not going to waste the money to go into production, they're not going to waste the money to really go after her legally. They're just going to not work with her again. That's how it will go. Anyway, thank you very much for the mail. Let me know if you disagree or you think that it will be some other thing will happen. Maybe you believe that Warner Media and Discovery are going to, need to release the movie to fulfill their ESG pledge. I don't know. You can throw that theory out there as well. Thanks for listening.